Ladies and gentlemen, after such a bad outbreak of measles in New York, the schools are now telling people they can't use religious exemptions to not get vaccines for their children. Now, if they don't get it, those children will be kicked out of school. So there's 26,000 students in the state of New York that do not have their vaccines. And they are saying, to the parents, get them their shots or they're not coming back to school. Most of the measles, ladies and gentlemen, came from those folks that were traveling back and forth from Israel. Israel has a really bad measles outbreak. And those folks brought it back to New York. And they had a pretty bad outbreak this year alone. So I knew they were going to take some kind of stand. So religious exemptions for vaccinations are no longer available. With the start of the school year, some parents face a reckoning. So, this woman in the picture, she's a real estate lawyer. She has 4 children. None of them have their vaccines, and she's already been warned to get them their vaccines or they run the risk of being removed from school. So, Jacqueline Vance Pauls, a real estate lawyer in upstate New York, has a 14-year-old son with autism who was recently kicked out of his private special needs school. Her 9-year-old twins and her high school senior, are also on the verge of being expelled from their public schools. The children did not do anything wrong, nor are they sick. Instead, Miss Vance Pauls has resisted complying with the new state law enacted amid a measles outbreak that ended religious exemptions to vaccinations for children in all schools and child care centers. Miss Vance Paul said she believed vaccines contributed to her son's autism, despite more than a dozen peer reviewed studies showing no such link. Well, they're going to keep saying that because they want these kids to get their shots. Um, the Bible, she said, barred her as a Christian and desecrated the body, which is what she says vaccines do. If you have a child who you gave peanut butter to and he almost died, why would you give it to your child, your next child? She said during an interview in August, trying to explain her fears. How do we turn our backs against what we have believed all these years because we have a gun to our heads? With the start of school this week, that's right, because they start school here in the Northeast in September. Miss Vance Paul, along with parents of about 26,000 other New York children who previously had obtained religious exemptions to vaccinations, are facing a moment of reckoning. Under the new law, all children must begin getting their vaccines within the first 2 weeks of classes and complete them by the end of the school year. Otherwise, parents must homeschool them or move out of the state. The measles outbreak that prompted the new law is actually easing. On Tuesday, Mayor Bill de Blasio declared the end to the measles outbreak in New York City, its epicenter. Since the start of the outbreak in October 2018, there have been 654 measles cases in the city and 414 in other parts of the state. where transmission has also slowed. The large majority of the cases have involved unvaccinated children in Hasidic Jewish communities, where immunization rates were sometimes far lower than the state average of 96%. Wide scale vaccination campaigns have helped lift those rates, but health officials warned on Tuesday that that as school begins, the highly contagious disease could easily return, particularly if vaccination rates drop again. The threat remains given other outbreaks in the US and around the world. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you know, the outbreak came from people traveling in and out of the country. And you can best believe that's not going to stop. They're going to still travel back and forth regardless to whether they get these shots or not. And I don't know. I don't know how many parents are going to really cooperate with this thing up in New York. Maine, where the new law barring all but medical exemptions does not go into effect until 2021, makes exemptions for special education students. California, where non medical exemptions were ended in 2015, gave parents with non medical exemptions extra time to comply and allowed districts to exempt disabled children. The New York law allows no such exemptions. The anti vaccination community in New York has filed several lawsuits seeking to block the legislation, but none have succeeded so far. At the same time, state health officials have been moving to close additional loopholes, announcing in August emergency regulations that make medical exemptions to vaccinate harder to get. California officials say the medical exemption rate to vaccinate increased from 0.2% to nearly 1% after other exemptions were eliminated, nulling the law's intended impact. I assure you, vaccines are safe and effective. Dr. Howard A. Zucker, the state health commissioner, says in a public service announcement running on television. I'm a father, he adds, my kids are vaccinated. The law is already encouraging parents on the fence about vaccination to immunize their children and is sending a message to public and private schools that the days of selective vaccination are over. But for parents who remain deeply skeptical, more steps will be needed, according to doctors who study vaccine refusal. Dr. Daniel Salmon, all right, so they're just trying to ease the public scare about getting the shots. That's all they're doing. So a 2011 study, for example, found that roughly a quarter of all American parents had serious concerns about vaccines, and 30% worried that vaccines may cause learning disabilities such as autism. Eliminating non medical exemptions is a partial solution. Well, I can see parents fighting this, and many of them probably will keep their kids at home, especially if they're backed against the wall about this whole thing. It's a big hammer that isn't getting at a bigger problem, a big problem, said. Parents have concerns that aren't being addressed. Well, to be honest with you, I'm not even crazy about the idea of vaccines because, look, we see vaccines not even being effective, you know? And I was reading that Gen X and millennials may have to get a second measles shot, you know? So if the shots are so effective, why would people have to get them over again? And we already see what happens with the flu vaccine. The one they gave for the last 2 years in a row were ineffective to the flu virus that was out for the season. So, if anything, the vaccines are not a guarantee. Yeah, they may give you some protection, but it doesn't eliminate everything. So, what do y'all think? What they're doing in New York? They're throwing the students out, 26,000 of them, if they don't get their shots. What do you think, especially if you're a parent? Would you go along with this? Especially if you don't believe in these vaccines. Please leave your comment and subscribe. Don't forget to hit on the notification bell, and I'll see you on the next video. Peace, family.